Hello, friends. Welcome back to Heartscapes, where we're learning the system of Reiki to live lives that are rooted, that are spacious, that are connected, and that to help us remember ourselves. My name is Michaela. Welcome back to not the studio this time. I am once again staying at a friend's place up in Lake Shasta area. I was here in January, and during a raucous storm, I made a video about the way that storm brought me into such deep fear. I had to confront the just the experience of it, but also the reality that sometimes we really need to feel feelings that we don't often feel as part of our growth. So that video ended up being really interesting and valuable to a lot of people. So I will link that down below in case you want to check it out. But I am back here in July for my birthday weekend. Very different weather experience, to be sure. And perhaps this change of scenery is, making me feel a little bit emboldened to share a video that I've been, quite frankly, kind of dancing on the tips of my fingers for a while, but more or less avoiding sharing with you all. And yeah, maybe just the change of pace is helping me to break out of that a little bit. For context, like in a YouTube channel, one of the things that I really appreciate when other YouTubers that I watch speak to is the question of how to balance how much of our personal selves, our lives, do we share on this very public platform. Many vloggers, for example, that are literally documenting their lives, have to make this decision. How transparent do I make that life? How much do I curate it to, look a particular way for my YouTube audience? Or how much do I just share, the reality of life? And what do I keep private? What do I hold back and not share? What do I hold just for my family or for myself? It's an interesting question, and I really appreciate the people who, at least from this side of the screen, I can see really making an effort to both be transparent and honest about their life and also hold good personal boundaries for, what they need in their family. Now, my channel is not a vlogging channel, but my work is very personal. It's very much coming out of my direct lived experiences. And so I do often share stories from my life, and some of them are vulnerable, some of them are painful, and I have to kind of set my criteria for what I share. And, especially when that sharing is on the vulnerable side, is on the private side. And, kind of what I've landed on is like, does this story, provide genuine value to you, my friends joining me here, in terms of your own journey, your own spiritual development, your own process of getting to know yourself more deeply? Does this actually share strategies or tools or perspectives or cautionary tales that'll be helpful to others as they think about how they might walk through their own life? Or to put it another way, to, quote my friends over on LawTube, the legal commentators who I love to watch on the legal side of YouTube, does this story provide value that is more probative or more prejudicial to me as the one presenting it? So this particular story has been feeling like something that wanted to be shared. And I think I've kind of finally landed on, what is the essence of it? What is the piece that might actually provide some value to you all watching? And this has gotten to be a fairly long intro, probably because I'm maybe still stalling actually talking about the story. So let me just go ahead and get into it. The general theme topic of this story is my dating life, my life as a single person for the last almost 4 years, the challenges inside of that, and the wall that I have hit around that experience, and the process of working to get past that wall, attempting for a time to bulldoze my way through it, to bang myself against that wall to get to the other side, and the humbling, painful realizations that I actually needed to surrender to something different and, really understand what was going on in me that caused me to feel like I had to keep pushing in a way that was not working for me. So that was a very vague description. Let me get into just a few details, and we'll play the game of how many details are enough details without being too many details. So for context, as I said, I've been single for about the past almost 4 years, going to the fourth year. My last relationship ended in deep 2020, which was quite frankly, a fucked up time to end a relationship. Deep in the most isolating time of that very, very strange year. And I had been in that relationship for 7 years. And prior to that relationship, I had been married for 15 years. And, with not a ton of time in between those two relationships, because the person that I was in relationship with after my marriage ended was a friend, somebody that I already knew and already trusted. And, at a certain point, an evolution of the relationship made sense. But I got married when I was 20, and I was married and parenting, but at age of 20, and had been with my ex-husband since I was a teenager. And so I had, honestly, my entire adult life had been, in part defined by these two very long-term relationships with very little time in between. And so, in other words, I'd never really been truly single as an adult, and I had never dated in the kind of normal, like casual dating, experiencing a lot of different types of relationships with different people, getting a sense of, how different people are in relationship, making decisions based on that variety of experiences. This was, something that I knew was a very normal thing to do, but I had never personally done it. And so, in a sense, I had a different mindset about what my strategy would be for finding my next relationship. So when I found myself single in 2020, I did have the wherewithal, thanks past self, to know that I did need to spend some time single. Never had done it as an adult. I needed to recover and to, do all the things that you need to do when you've been defining your life in relationship to other people to a significant degree for a long time. And so that was good and hard. And I didn't like it, but but I did it. And inside of that time, quite a bit came through. This channel started about that time, so a lot of the kind of early just explorations of coming to know myself more deeply through the lens of my Reiki practice. Some of that was shared here in this space. It was definitely a good and valuable and necessary experience for me to have as a person, as an adult. Definitely would recommend 10 out of 10 spending some time single, even when you don't want to. But at a certain point, it felt like, it was time to be with somebody again. And, here's where we get into some of the pieces that I wanted to share. Because there were things going on consciously for me, and there was a whole lot going on subconsciously, which is true for all of us all the time. And part of why this is vulnerable to share is like I teach that quite extensively, right? The work that I do, especially with soul collage, but even in terms of Reiki. When I talk about Reiki being something that helps us get rooted and spacious and connected, that helps us remember ourselves, this is what I'm talking about. Like, get a firm foundation under ourselves so that we can feel stable enough to really look inside, understand as well as we can the values and the beliefs and the fears and the societal expectations and all of the murky milieu of influences that are causing us to feel and believe and value and therefore behave in certain ways. And as much as we can, to get some clarity and stillness around those things so that we can make choices that feel more aligned with our true self, more aligned with what serves life, our own life and others, rather than serving fear or serving limiting beliefs about ourselves or the world, serving places in ourselves that are trying to cling on or to attach or to accumulate out of fear or other motivations, just to bring clarity to all of that so that we can live our lives as an embodiment of the Reiki precepts, unattached to fear and anger, rooted in gratitude and compassion, and being true to ourselves. All of that is really what I've been immersed in quite some time. And I'm human. And so there are absolutely places in my life that I have blind spots, right? Totally normal. If I wasn't still working on myself and developing and growing as a person, I probably wouldn't be as much use to any of you, or to myself for that matter. So, there's places in my life that I really have these concepts dialed in, that I really reach for my Reiki practice and my soul collage practice and my community and, other practices of self-reflection and growth and being with discomfort and making more space for it. And there's parts of my life that have been overlooked in these efforts, that I am not applying these things, that I have not investigated myself to the depths that I would like, and therefore that I'm living in limitation, right? That I'm living inside of stories that I'm not in control of or even aware of. And that's really the heart of what I wanted to share, is the way in which the last month or so has brought me into a very painful, but really powerfully, ultimately positive confrontation with limiting beliefs about myself and about the world that have not only negatively impacted me in the realm of finding a partner, or, of any kind, but has in really sneaky and pernicious, and when I realized it, really startling ways, seeped into other areas of my life in ways that were limiting those areas as well. So, I mentioned that, I kind of developed this idea that I was not going to be a person who casually dated. That's something other people do. But for me, my strategy, because of my personality and my history, was going to be to really connect with a friend and get to know them and build trust and build connection and really understand each other. And then that will develop into a long-term partnership. Sounds great, right? Like to enter into a partnership where you already know them, like them, trust them, know your points of compatibility, your points of incompatibility. Sounded ideal to me. Sounded like a great strategy to me. On paper, it's a great strategy. But what I found over the last 2 years or so, almost 2 years, is that I actively followed this strategy 5 separate times, 5 separate people that I considered good friends, that all the criteria I just described. And in each of those instances, when I shared this desire for the relationship to be more than friends, I was met with the same response. It was like comically the same response over and over again. Comically now, not comically then, but some version of, wow, that is so sweet. I'm so flattered. You're such a good friend, such a kind and wonderful person. I don't like you like that. Solid trip to the friend zone, one after another. And by the last time that happened, not so very long ago, it had gotten to be too much rejection, too much devastation. I finally had to recognize the failed pattern that I was in. Thinking of that old idiom that, insanity can be defined as doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, right? Not exactly appropriate, because this is with different people, so I could have maybe expected different results with different people, but nevertheless, the results were not different. It truly was the same thing over and over again. And one of the things that I've noticed, in the past 5 years or so of really deeply exploring, not only my own internal landscape, but that relationship that our internal space has with the world around us, which I call intuition. That's how I define intuition, is the integration of our internal capacities, our body, our mind, our heart, our energy, our breath, our imagination, all of those things in integration with the external world and opening to information passing between them. And so, one of the ways in which I have found my intuition speaking to me is in kind of revealing patterns. When, when I really need to learn something and I've maybe been ignoring it, or I've been missing it, or I've been misinterpreting it, there will be this experience where the same thing will happen, like in rapid succession, such that I can't ignore it, right? Like this is just too similar a pattern, too close in time to ignore. And that's what happened in this instance. So by that fifth attempt at rolling a good friend over into the role of my life partner, I'm laughing at it now, but honestly, like, I was certain that this is how this was going to go down. After that fifth rejection, I really hit that wall and was like, this is not working, and I don't understand why. And I realized that I had been banging against that wall, right? No, it's gonna happen this way. This is my strategy. I don't do that casual dating thing, right? This is gonna be the way that I'm gonna find my forever person. Damn it. Bang my head against the wall again. And that last banging my head was just too many bangs to the head. And I had to like pause and say, okay, but why do you believe that? Right? Because I was so ungrounded in this, right? I was so, again, not applying what I know to do in order to get clarity around things that matter. I was not doing that in this instance. I was completely avoiding doing that work around this topic. And I know now that that's because, and isn't this always the way? Perhaps you've had an experience like this, that there's something where you really, really, really are doing it in a way that is harmful, or that is unproductive, or that's, feeding into something toxic that's inside of you, but you're not ready to deal with it, right? And so you just bang your head against it and you ignore those signs. So I got to the point where I couldn't ignore the signs anymore. I had to ask myself, why am I doing this? And at first, the answers were superficial. They were surface level, like, well, this is how I've always done it. This is what I know. My personality, I'm very introverted. I don't, going out and like mingling and, networking and meeting people in that kind of casual way doesn't feel good to me. It's never been my style. The idea of casual dating, like, all of the potential rejection and, all of these things. And I had to say, like, okay, but you're getting rejected by people you really care about in this strategy. So that can't be it. So I finally just had the wherewithal to just stop and to pause and to do what I know to do, which is to apply these practices to this area of my life. And when I got still and quiet and I got myself grounded and I got myself spacious and open to possibility and open to seeing and feeling new things, so right in the midst of that first, like, hitting that wall and realizing I couldn't keep doing the strategy anymore, again, like, patterns that reveal themselves in short succession, being a difficult but powerful way that my intuition gets my attention. I went through a period of time, just a couple of months, where there were deep experiences of grieving that happened in succession. 3 people close to me who passed away, and we held their funerals. Some other things in my life that just brought up a lot of grief, a lot of pain. And luckily, I had the wherewithal to, choose to really be in that process. Like, I could feel myself starting to shut down from like grief fatigue, pain fatigue, sadness fatigue. At a certain point around the 3rd funeral, just really feeling myself wanting to kind of shut down and dissociate from it. And on the other side of it, opened up this incredibly tender and clarifying mental emotional state where still until now, this has now been almost a month, I feel like I'm walking with this greater sense of like sparkly clarity about what I'm experiencing in relationship to the world. And it was inside of that space that I started to really be able to look at this question of why am I behaving like this around this area of my life that feels incredibly important. At this point, I very much want partnership in various ways, and have continuously been running into this wall, and not even really wanting to like engage in that. And what really got shown to me in that space was some profoundly toxic and limiting beliefs that I had been carrying around, that I'm still carrying around, I'm now actively working with, that I wasn't even aware of. And this is really, now what are we, 20 minutes in? This is where, I think that there's hopefully value for other people, because we have these limiting beliefs that we carry around. They are built in our psyche over our entire life, and many of them are implanted there when we're quite young, before we're really aware of it. And they settle in our subconscious, and they dictate what we believe and think and feel and how we behave. And there's so many amazing, beautiful practices, and just from spirituality and healing spaces and art spaces and psychology spaces, and ideally a blending of those things that really help us to open up to those subconscious beliefs again, so that we can have more clarity about the choices that we're making and our motivations, so that we can respond in service of life, in service of love, instead of in service of fear or attachment. And so I had been consciously believing that, I'm somehow, I don't know, this is an embarrassing way to say it, but I think on a certain level it's true in terms of what I was consciously thinking. I'm too good for casual dating, right? That's not my strategy. I'm gonna zero in on that person, and then that's gonna be it. What I realized was actually driving that below the surface were beliefs that come directly from society's view of women, and in particular aging women, the way that blended in my mind with old childhood stuff around being abandoned, being bullied, being weird, being that weirdo kid that, had a rough time in school. I always felt very much singled out and just different from everybody else. I never dated in high school either. I mean, well, I did, but I dated people who were out of high school. I dated adults when I was in high school, because the whole social situation of, interacting with the casual dating happening in high school was terrifying to me. Just never felt like I was part of it. And so these old experiences merging with, societal opinions about women's desirability when they age had created this toxic belief that essentially went like, I have become single for the first time in my adult life at age 43 at that point. I am now too old for casual dating. I am now, too old to be interesting. I am now invisible. This is something that, I hear talked about, and that, I've talked about with other women around my age, that there's this invisibility that happens where, you kind of, I don't know, you're perceived as, I don't know what the perception is, but the feeling is that we're invisible, that we're just not perceived by, a lot of people, but in particular, people we might be interested in. I kind of just took that as true, that's just a true phenomenon, that I'm now stuck inside of it. I'm now a middle-aged single woman, and I am therefore undesirable and unattractive and uninteresting, and I'm invisible. And therefore, if all of that is true, then the only way I'm ever going to find connection with somebody meaningfully, or even casually, is by befriending them first, by proving to them what a cool person I am, how interesting I am, how smart I am, how funny I am, how, spiritually evolved I am, how creative I am, just what a cool and awesome person I am. I have to prove that through friendship before there will be any attraction or interest. And all of a sudden, this belief that I had been consciously thinking of as like, I am I am more evolved than this actually turned into, I actually don't believe in myself in this realm. Like I actually don't believe in my greatness. Because I feel like I have to prove it, right? I have to go out of my way to prove it before anybody else will see it. And I damn well better make myself smart and funny and interesting and, all of those things, because nobody's just going to just find me attractive and interesting in a casual way. The idea of going on dating apps. I know some of y'all are typing about dating apps right now in the comments. I fought against them. Like, absolutely not. I will absolutely not use a dating app, right? I'm going to find my soulmate reaching for the same watermelon in the grocery store. That is how I'm going to find my soulmate. Or they're going to be my best friend and then they'll be my soulmate. So this realization that, I had this belief that I was aware of, but underneath it was this other series of beliefs that were really quite toxic and quite damaging and quite unkind, like just so mean. Such a mean system of beliefs about myself. And, by extension, about other women. But, at the essence, this was just a tragically unkind set of beliefs that I was holding about myself, that I was just not able to see or willing to work with before. And I'm very grateful to that protracted period of grieving and difficulty and the willingness of my past self, good job past self, to stay in it, to stay in that experience instead of checking out from it, because on the other side of it has been so much incredibly important learning about myself that isn't even about the things that I was grieving. But there was a certain way in which that depth of grieving and being, really willing to be inside of it and make more space for it, do all the things that we talk about on this channel, get grounded and rooted so that we feel safe and that we have a strong foundation underneath us, so that we can get spacious, we can make more space inside for whatever it is that we're feeling, so that we can ultimately feel connected to ourselves and each other and the world and all of the deep feelings that come along with that. Because I was willing to do that around the grieving process, around these other things, it opened up space for this uninterrogated belief that absolutely needed to be interrogated, and I was unwilling to look at because I was banging my head against that wall. So I'm really grateful to past Michaela for going through that process and opening up this space. Once I saw that belief, once the veil had been pulled back and I got clarity about that particular belief that was running how I was engaging with the idea of dating and the way it was shutting down entirely the concept even of casual dating, and this desperation, this hyper fixation on like the forever person, right? It's like I had two speeds, like single forever for the rest of my life, soulmate forever and ever. And like we need to jump from one to the other with like no stops in between, right? All of the stops in between, all of the challenge and messiness and discomfort, but also joy and experimentation and fun and casual connecting and intimacy that can happen on this pathway, that should happen on that pathway, at least in many instances. And should is not the right word. That can happen, the possibility for that happening. I was absolutely overlooking because of how deeply I had embodied this belief about myself and about middle-aged womanhood and desirability generally. And here's the most painful part about it, and the part that really just cracked me open over the past few weeks, and that has really insisted, made something inside me insist that I address it, is that once I'd pulled back that veil and got that clarity, I could see the way that same belief that was specifically about dating and partnership and romantic life had seeped into other areas of my life, into my business life, into my friendships, into my relationship with food and exercise, the way that I was treating myself, in other words. It had its tendrils in everything. That was the hardest part. I'll give you an example. I became aware once I realized that I was fully bought into and participating in this belief that I was invisible. I stopped making eye contact with people on the street. I stopped having kind of casual, witty banter with like clerks at the store. I stopped any kind of casual flirting that might happen, just the kind of like not going to lead anywhere, but there's just like casual flirting that happens just in your daily life as you interact with people because, people are fun and it's fun to interact that way. It's not doing that anymore. I was not just smiling at strangers, as I passed them on the street. Not even like people that I would be attracted to or like, would wish to explore a relationship with, but anybody. Just anybody. I was shutting down connection. Why? Because I'm invisible, I'm undesirable, I'm unworthy, I'm unwanted, nobody's going to like me, I'm going to be rejected. By everybody, apparently. Again, not aware that this was a belief that was operating. But once I was aware of it and I was just going about my life, I noticed I don't make eye contact with people anymore. I don't smile at them. I don't flirt with them. I'm participating in this belief that I'm invisible. Then I started to notice the way it was affecting me in my business. One of the things that was top of my list for my business goals for this year, if you go back to my video I made at the beginning of the year about looking at my goals for Heartscapes for this year, it was developing more partnerships, more relationships with other practitioners that have complementary work, to create something bigger than we can create ourselves, to, connect and to, do all the magical things that you do when you have the space to do it with other magical people. And I had this long list of people that we had, an initial conversation about doing something. What I realized was that unless that other person was actively pursuing that project or that partnership or that, video collab, like whatever it was, like something as simple as a video collaboration, but up to traveling across the country to facilitate something together. Unless that other person was actively pursuing it, I was not going to pursue it. If it was just kind of a general, hey, we should do a thing, I would we would like to do a thing. Let's make a plan to do a thing. If it was in the realm of kind of the general intention, I would not be the one to make that first move to make a plan, which is not like me, right? Because I like to make a plan, and I like to move forward on connections like that. So I noticed that, and I said, there it is again, this belief that if I pursue that, I'm going to get rejected because I'm invisible and I'm unlovable and I'm unwanted and I'm undesirable and nobody wants to work with me, right? Which I did not have any actual evidence for at all, right? In fact, I had evidence to the contrary, right? People really wanting to connect and to collaborate. But somebody's got to make that first move to put it into the calendar and like make the plan happen. And again, if it wasn't the other person, it wasn't going to be me because I was not going to activate the opportunity to be rejected again. That was a rough one. I noticed similar patterns in friendships. I noticed similar patterns in family relationships. Again, all of a sudden, I saw this belief like snaking its tendrils into all of these areas of my life. And that was shocking. And it was so disheartening. And at the same time, was empowering because now that I could see it, I could address it. And this is such an important thing that I have to learn over and over again and have to speak to publicly over and over again, is that the practices like the system of Reiki, like soul collage, like many other systems of practice that have been developed, that help bring clarity, that help still the waters inside of ourselves. Let the distractions and the confusion and all of the swirling different messages and stories, let them settle to the bottom so that we can really see, at least, to as well as we can, what is happening inside. That's when we can actually make change. And we need those practices at the same time to help us be uncomfortable in that process, because damn it, it's uncomfortable, if not excruciatingly painful at times. And so we have that inside of the system of Reiki. Thank goodness. When we practice it from its Japanese origins, we have this incredibly simple yet accessible and comprehensive set of perspectives and beliefs and mindsets and practices that do all of these things for us, right? That steady us, that clear the waters, that connect us to resources, and that help us to be in the discomfort of all of that so that we can move through it and get to the other side of it. We can move through that liminal space and become something new, or something that we always have been, but we've forgotten. So that's the space that I'm in now, with this regard to this issue, and the ways in which this issue has bled into other parts of my life. Really, what has happened in this years long process is that I've built this like protective layer over my heart with regard to relationships, for a lot of reasons. I had experienced some abuse in one of those relationships, and just again, lots of limiting beliefs from childhood, like lots and lots of reasons why you kind of put some armor around your heart. And in most areas of my life, I've really opened up that armor, and I've really softened that, and that's why I do this work. But in this area, it was still very much armored up. And so, opening up that armor can be so tender and so vulnerable. So, we gotta do that work at a level that challenges us enough to keep growing, but doesn't challenge us so much that we shut back down. So I've been thinking about, simple, easily repeated practices that I can do in the realm of the territory of the heart, which would be practices of courage, compassion, and connection. That's the territory of the heart. Courageous, compassionate connection. So, one of those practices has just simply been when I'm out and about in the world, I'm challenging myself to make eye contact and smile with as many people as I can as I'm walking past them or as I'm interacting with them in the world. To again kind of reverse that habit that had formed quite without my awareness of not doing that, right? Of turning away and looking away and not having that casual connection of just a casual smile and eye contact. It's been surprisingly challenging because first of all, it's become a habit to not do that. And as I step back into trying to build the habit to do that, it brings that fear of rejection, right? What if I smile at this person and they don't smile at me, or whatever? And I'm realizing how much like weight I'm putting on that, right? This stranger doesn't smile at me when I smile at them. Oh no, that means I'm being rejected, right? So if I have that experience, okay, hi, little me, you're not being rejected. Just move on. Just move on. It's not about you, right? And of course, I'm having a lot of experiences of really nice little moments of connection with people, because for the most part, people do smile back at you when you smile at them. And then letting that evolve into, more banter with people, more, connection. In the realm of business, I've, looked back at that list of people that I've, wanted to collaborate with, and I'm reaching out to them and I'm saying, hey, let's get on the calendar and let's have a conversation. So I'm challenging myself to reach out in that way, in this way that I've been holding back from. And I'm excited about, how that might lead to greater possibilities. And in the realm of dating, I did join a dating app. And many of the things about it that I was afraid that I would hate and that would, that it would be awful, some of them are kind of awful, some of it is not great. Others have not been bad the way that I thought that it would be. And then there's whole new challenges I didn't even know existed because I've never done it before. It's a whole different skill set dealing with those dating apps. So still in that, still deciding if that's actually a tool that I like using, that I will use. But I think the more important thing is just the openness to be more experimental and to be more casual and to take my fixation off of this end goal, right? Again, this dichotomy I've been living in with either I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life or I'm going to, find my soulmate in an instant and jump right into it and then it's forever, letting myself be inside of the liminal space in between and finding. Some of y'all are laughing at me because you're like, yeah, obviously, like it's how you do it. Like that's the normal thing to do. I get it, but I've never done it. So it's not been normal to me. And what I'm finding is what, again, probably a lot of people know is that inside of that liminal space, there's a lot of discomfort. There's a lot of challenge. There's some fuckery afoot in that place. Excuse my language. But there's also a lot of fun and a lot of joy and a lot of connection and a lot of interesting things to experience and to learn. And again, this is not new information to most people, but it's new for me. And I'm hoping that sharing this, has been more probative than it has been prejudicial to me, in the sense that I do think there's something in here for us to work with, just around the importance of noticing those places where we feel like we're banging our head against a wall, using our practices to pause, to put some space around that experience, to ask ourselves why. Why am I continually banging against this wall? Why am I choosing to do that? And why do I keep experiencing the same outcome? To let our practices create the space where we can pull back the veil and we can gain clarity into our own process. It will be difficult. It will be painful. And at the heart of it, at the center of it, is going to be so much joy and revelation as we get to understand ourselves better and as we get to settle the toxins that have been floating inside of our waters, clouding our behavior and our thoughts and our feelings in ways that, as I discovered, probably have tendrils going into all aspects of our life, not just the area that it's specifically focused on. It's really worthy work. It's necessary for our growth. And it's a process that can help us not only be better people ourselves, but create stronger communities, stronger connection, stronger bonds of trust and love with each other as we are willing to go through processes like that. Ultimately create more resilient individuals and more resilient communities, which is something that our world very much needs. So that's my story. Thank you for listening. That felt very vulnerable. I might have a bit of a vulnerability hangover later. We'll see. I am grateful to this magical space, this beautiful home here in the shadow of Mount Shasta that apparently, shook me up enough that I was willing to jump on here and share this with you. Hopefully I'll also be willing to edit this video and post it on YouTube. So if you are watching this, then I did in fact get that wherewithal, and I hope that you have found some value in this story, or at least can, have some solidarity with me, send me some words of encouragement on this journey. I would love to hear them. I'd also love to hear your experiences with walking a similar process of revelation about something inside of you that maybe has held you back. Is there a pattern in your life that you feel like you're banging against over and over again that you would like to seek clarity for? I'd love to support you in that. So please do feel free to reach out if you are interested in taking a similar journey. At the very least, I'd love to hear about it down in the comments below. So please do join me in conversation down there. And as you go into your day, as you go throughout what this beautiful day has for you, may you be deeply provisioned for it and deeply provisioned for whatever revelations of yourself are yours to have this season. Thanks so much for being with me. Until next time, I love you. Goodbye.